On this episode of Conversations with Sharika, my guest is Lyndsay King. Lyndsay King is a life coach and a mentor, and she is a businesswoman. She's been in business for more than 20 years. And we are talking about permission to be rich. Did you know that you actually need to give yourself permission to make money? Yes, you do. You do have to give yourself permission to make money, and you can give yourself permission to make money. Everything is a mind game, and if you can develop the right mindset, you can be rich in every area of your life, whether it's money or it's with your relationships or your social life, because wealth goes all around, it matters in every area. So, this is an amazing conversation. There might be some toes that we step on and so on, but I promise you it'll be well worth it. Enjoy.
Yeah. Welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. So
Yeah, I'm
I
really glad I could be here with you. And guys, just so you understand, I have just come back from my honeymoon yesterday, and I do
oh
coaching
wow.
all day Thursday. And I'm also moving to Norway on Tuesday, so it's been a little bit hectic. And
Wow.
I would have loved to have had more time to like fix myself up and get ready, but you know what? The knowledge is still in there, so it's fine.
And you
Yeah,
look
I'll
great.
just take my. So, Sharika, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really looking forward to our discussion.
Yes, me too. Thank you as well for joining us. So I've already told the people who I am, so I'd love if you could go ahead and tell the people who you are.
Okay, thank you so much. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lyndsay King, and I am a mentor, I'm a coach, I am a lifelong entrepreneur, and I've created an academy called the Accelerate Your Life Academy, and I've developed a methodology for total life transformation called the Accelerate Your Life process. And I basically reinvented my career about 4 or 5 years ago when I created the Accelerate Your Life method and I started testing it. And I went through massive awakening. I practiced quantum leaping and quantum shifting. And essentially, I have devoted myself to living into the life of my dreams for the rest of my life. So, yeah, that's who I am, and that's what I'm doing right now. And
Awesome. And Lyndsay is also my coach as well, so I know she has a lot of good stuff to share. So, what got you into self-development? Why did you get into this field?
well, it's a really good question. I feel that from the time that I was a child, I felt that there was something calling me into like a greater mission or a greater purpose. I
Right?
personally always felt very different on the inside. I felt like very different from the people around me. I felt like I could see into situations, I could see into the truth about things. And one of the things that I committed to in my young life, like we're talking like 7, 8, 9 years old, like 5 years old, like young life, was that I was committed to always living into my truth. And from there, when I was a teenager, I started to study mindset. I started to study psychic telepathy. I started to study philosophy. And I became an avid reader about phenomenon in the world, like psychic phenomenon. And I also started to study business. So it was kind of like this interesting duality that was always playing out in my life. And over the course of the past 25 years, I studied many different religions of the world. I studied many different philosophers and philosophies. And part of that is that I started to understand personal development, because that's what a lot of the greatest gurus and teachers in the world are talking about. So when I went into the corporate world and my career sort of, I say skyrocketed, like took off, and I was suddenly caught up in this really intensive work environment, I also started to study management, because as a manager, I realized that your team is only as good as you. And that was probably one of the more challenging lessons of my life. So I started to understand that so much that was being taught in leadership was personal development, and was connected to philosophy and religions and spirituality and kind of like, you know, mindset, which is like this ability that we have with our mind to create the reality that we live in. So that's how I got involved in personal development, by kind of following my heart and living into it myself and putting it into practice.
Okay, that's interesting. You said something that made me want to ask this question. You have studied many different religions. What are some of the common, I know we're here to talk about money, but we'll get to that, but what are some of the common factors that you found existed across all religions?
Well, that's so interesting, because when I was a teenager, I started to create my own practice and my own philosophy for living life, which was contradictory to some of my religious upbringing. I was raised Catholic, and I was also raised by a Jewish mother. But then at the same time, I lived in like a very diverse, multicultural area, one of the most culturally diverse towns or cities in the country, in New Jersey, Fort Lee, New Jersey. And I started to notice that there were common threads or philosophies and beliefs that ran through all of the main religions, and also all of the sub-religions of the world. Like, you know, honesty, integrity, doing your very best, you know, honoring your parents, like this sort of stuff. And I was like, it's so interesting, because from a philosophical point of view, the philosophies are not flawed. Energetically, the philosophies are okay. Don't steal, gratefulness, gratitude, thanks, meditation, prayer, silence, finding the answers from within, you know, trusting and having faith that there's like a bigger energy other than us. I say a higher power, you know, in religion they say a higher power, or they'll talk about God, you know, and I kind of related it to what I call the universe, and what I now today call the laws of the universe, like universal forces, although I didn't know that that's what they were called at the time. So I really started to practice almost like in line with Buddhism, like Buddhist tradition, because I felt that I was following more of a philosophy of life rather than like a religion that was more structured for control and community, which is fine, right? I don't have any problems with that. But I do know kind of how religions were developed and how they were formed and how they function. They function to serve people in their need for community and connection and, you know, grounding and acceptance. Okay. So, yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's really wonderful. But across all those religions that you would have come across or studied, what was the mindset about money in those religions? Was there a similarity, or was it, but not just money, but wealth and riches and abundance and prosperity? What was the teaching or the philosophy around that subject?
Well, the interesting part is that one of the things I found was that in many religions, the people at the top had a lot of money. They were loaded. They had beautiful buildings. They were like collecting money and cash every day from the people, because actually most organized religions will activate one of the laws of the universe, which is called tithing. And there's like an energetic law to give 10% of your earnings to something greater than yourself.
Right.
So what many religions have done is they would instill this law amongst their populations, and then the population contribute, and that's okay. You know, that is a law of the universe. But I also found that in particularly many Western religions, it's not just Western, actually. A theme throughout is that money is the root to all evil. Money creates greed. Money should not be worshipped before other gods. Like in Christianity, they say that. And in many Eastern religions, they practice minimalism, or what we would call detachment. Detaching yourself from materialistic items, detaching yourself from wealth, detaching yourself from money. And they kind of focus at the core on being the truth of who you are and letting go of the ego self to let your higher self start to take the lead, or what we would call in our energetic work, letting the heart lead rather than the head. There are all different ways to phrase this stuff. But at the core, many people that were brought up in certain religions, they don't have a belief system that serves them in terms of money. The belief system actually creates a lot of guilt, or it creates a feeling of not being unified with the Holy Spirit, or with, you know, God or the universe, or however it works. So there's a lot of misunderstandings that come out of the way that people understand money when it comes to organized religion and to different philosophies.
So I might step on some corns here, but here goes. You said that you found that the people at the top of these organized religions were loaded, right? Yet the general populace had limiting money beliefs. So there's a contradiction there, right? There is a major contradiction, because then if money is evil, why do you have it and I can't have it? Can you care to comment on that?
Yeah, I can, because, you know, many people believe that in the name of like their religion or their belief system, it's okay to have money to serve the people. And that is great. That's fine. But humans are humans. So, you know, we do need money in order to create more spirituality in the world. And that is not an untruth. But I think some religions, particularly some Western religions, have been organized to control a population. And that's cool. We're not like bashing religions. It's just the way they were founded, because religions were founded before politics. Religious structures were the original politics, because their goal was to create order, to create some sort of structure so people could thrive, they could unify their belief systems, they would have some reason to know each other and to trust each other. But part of that was also to keep people in a system that was working for the government or for the religious organization at the time. So as religion has evolved, it's changed a lot. And it's not based on the same thing, but a lot of the original reasons that Western religions were instilled was to keep the masses of people calm and under control and functioning in society, which is where the whole concept of heaven, which they say is not on earth, was founded. It was like, if you just stay humble, stay quiet, give your money here, donate, do your thing, focus on your life, go to work hard, you will be rewarded when you die by going to heaven, where you can have everything you want. And you know, Shrika, because you've been working with me for a year, like I have a lot of controversial things to say. And you'll know that I always say that heaven is really a state of mind. You know, we can achieve living in heaven right now here on earth. And there's been a lot of misunderstandings or like translations of the way things were kind of originally formed, which were beautiful in their original state. But humans get involved, and that's cool. That's what we're here to do. It changes a little bit. It's like lost in translation.
Yeah. Well, my philosophy of heaven is, I was raised Christian, right? So my philosophy of heaven is within me. That's what I believe. So I believe that if I can go within and sit down, I can pull my heaven out and have it in my physical experience. Now, we're all entitled to the things that we believe, and we're not here to change anyone or to convince anyone of anything. We're just here to explore the idea of being wealthy and giving ourselves permission to be wealthy and having a mindset that wealth is okay and riches is okay. And as I said, I was raised Christian, and when I look through the Bible, the people that are people of God were wealthy people. Even if they didn't start out wealthy, they ended wealthy. And unless they did something that was not supposed to be done, they stayed wealthy. So that's my philosophy on that. So I'm not here to bash religion either. We're just bringing some things to light.
Yeah,
Anyways.
absolutely. There are so many different religions and so many different things. There's like a million different ways, literally. It's just
Right.
like historically so fascinating to look at where like a lot of these underlying belief systems were formed around wealth and abundance.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100% with that. So what I want to ask you next is, how did you give yourself permission to be rich? When did that happen? I know you started, well, before we get to that, tell us how you started, how you got into corporate, and when you switched over, at what point did you give yourself permission to be rich and permission to dominate or to stand in your truth and your power and to be a light to other people? When did that occur?
Yeah, I'd like to say that it happened all at once, but it was a gradual process. So I realized when I was quite young as a teenager, like a young teenager, a preteen, that, you know, I wanted more. And I ordered my first subscription to Entrepreneur Magazine, and I started reading about like all these different businesses that people had built. And as soon as I was old enough, I had been working little jobs for family members when I was in my preteens. And as soon as I was old enough to work, I started working, and I always worked 2 jobs, and I made a lot of money. I actually made a lot of money for my age. I worked in sales, and I was good at it, and I was paid commission at a young age. So by the time I was 16, I kind of had my own cash. I had my own money, and I was already starting to feel this pull, this urge to get out into the world. I wanted to be around people who had a bigger way of thinking. I wanted to be around people who were highly successful. I came from a middle class, regular kind of family. But one of the things in our family was always that we were worried about money, worried and worried. There was never enough, never enough. And I just didn't want to worry. I wanted to have nice things. I wanted to have new jumpers. I wanted to have stuff that I saw other people had that I wanted, certain kind of shoes, watches, whatever. The new Jordans, it doesn't matter. But I wanted all of that, and I wanted a nice home, and funny enough, I never cared about my car, but it's just everybody's so different. And I started working for it, and that's how I was able to start traveling at a young age, because I knew that there was so much more in the world than where I was raised. And I was raised in a pretty urban area outside of New York City, but I knew there was still more. So I immediately moved to New York City, and I started working there, and I started really learning, you know, about the competitiveness of like understanding what it takes to kind of get into the game. And I made a decision. That, you know, I never wanted to have my income capped. I knew it was going to take me many years to get to a point where I could really run and thrive in my own business. But, you know, I started to shift my attitude towards work and realized that all of the jobs and all of the different companies I worked for were me in training, like in a boot camp for my future. I made a decision that I would work my ass off in my 20s as hard as I possibly could, as much as I possibly could, so that I could retire by the time I was 45. And I decided that I didn't want to work hard when I was old. I would do it when I was young. So it was kind of like a gradual decision. From the time I was about 14 or 15, I was working 2 jobs and going to high school. And there were phases of that decision. There were times where I was in tears over it. And there were many, many incredible experiences that started to open up my world and open up my awareness as I began to travel and travel. And I became like, you know, a travel addict, right? I travel all over the world. But because of that, the awareness expanded. And then my level of what I wanted and what I strove to achieve expanded as well. And it's just amazing how, you know, this decision, this permission to be rich starts to become a part of the development, because there's always another level.
Yeah.
Even when you're at your top level, there's going to be something that's more. And then it's like, could I really have that? Could I not? And that's when we start to get into this personal development, like allowing that permission to be real and true and achievable. I'm just waving because I see people commenting.
Yeah, that's okay, no problem at all.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm curious. Being that you weren't born in an environment that facilitated that kind of mindset and that kind of growth. I know you said you read entrepreneurial magazines, but how do you think that process began for you?
Let's see. So I definitely was different from the environment that I was born into. Like, I don't feel like there were a lot of people like me or who agreed with my thinking about like striving to go to the top. A lot of people were fearing for me that I was going to be like chewed up and spit out or eaten alive in the competition. I had a lot of people think that my travel was just outrageous and insane, and it was a bad idea to go to different countries and to kind of go there by myself at a young age. But I also have to admit that I did grow up in New Jersey, and that's just outside of New York City, and there's like a very strong kind of entrepreneurial mindset in people. Like, they call them hustlers or whatever you want to call them, but it's a hustle mentality. Like, the hustle is real, the hustle is on. But I kind of felt like I didn't want to just be like a street hustler. I wanted to like take it to another level. I wanted to like have legitimate money and legitimate life and be able to like actually thrive and grow that for myself in a more solid way. And as I moved over to Europe and I started traveling in Europe, I was able to see a very different kind of way of life and just a different mentality in the way people operate in their businesses and in the way that they move and kind of shapeshift around in the world. And I think that really started to challenge my belief systems around like what I was capable of.
Yeah, I can only imagine how intense that must have been because I haven't traveled anywhere as yet, so I can't comprehend that. But I will at some point in time. Now, there's a belief, right, that the people at the top, they had it easy and they always had help, somebody to help them up, someone to fall on. They had money in the bank, so even though we see them on YouTube or wherever we see them, there is something behind their story, and the average person cannot do that. People are unable to fathom that a regular person is able to just do that. What do you have to say to those people?
Oh, you know what? It's such a good, it's like the most important topic. And I'm so glad you asked that question. You know, like, I could have been born into like a family that was worse off, but I could have also been born into a family that was better off. But the truth is that we're born where we're born. You know, I happen to have, my grandmother had remarried a man when I was a child, who was an orphan and grew up in an orphanage. And he raised his 7 younger brothers and sisters. But he also became a wonderful, brilliant entrepreneur with no education in his life. So he was really someone that I chose. Probably my family doesn't even know this about me. But I loved him. I idolized him. I think it was like in 1985, he had a telephone installed in the toilet. And I was like, that's what I want. When I get older, you know, who has a phone in the bathroom? And it's like, you know, we have the ability to choose the people we want to link with. You know, I encourage everyone to choose the person that inspires you, that you aspire to be like. Study them, believe in them, notice their mannerisms. One of the things I learned from him is that everywhere he went, he was so kind to the people who were working. Like the people who were like opening up the car door, pushing open the door in a restaurant. He always went into the kitchen of every restaurant to say thank you to the cook and the guys in the back, the chef. He always was so kind to a waiter or a waitress. He was just a really kind guy, humble as ever, because he grew up in the street and he grew up creating businesses, like hustling in Boston, actually. That's where he was from. And his story inspired me.
Your sound is gone again.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes,
I'm just going to hook up my power source. His Can you hear me now? When I was younger, that I made a decision that I wanted to be like him. I wanted to live a life like him. So, you know, it's like everyone has the ability to find someone they aspire to be like. Everyone has the ability to choose who they hang out with. Everyone has the ability to start reading books and studying information that is in the direction of who they're becoming. So, you know, as a child, I can't say that I had an easy upbringing. I don't even really talk about it that often, but I experienced periods of like not sleeping in my, like sleeping, I slept in the street a little bit. You know, I was really...
All of that is important.
Yeah, I really hit the bottom many times in my life because I chose to follow my heart and my truth. And I would not accept anything less, but that's not common and normal. It's not accepted generally in society, especially from a child who is like, no, I won't do that. It's not aligned with, and people are like, that's it, punishment. You know, so it creates a lot of challenging situations, but the challenging situations are the ones that build your character. Yes, that's when you're really put to the test. And I always had an underlying belief, which I realized later was a belief from the time I was a teenager. And it was, you know, you can take everything from me, pull the shirt off my back, leave me standing in the street with nothing, and I will rebuild my life even better than it was before. And that's something that I truly believe, and I don't know if it will be easy, but it's possible. People do it all the time. And I, you know, in the city, we see people come with a few dollars in their pocket and build their life into a magnificent fortune, and they don't have any help. They don't have any money. They just get they get in the game. They get in the game. They make the changes they need to make. They get in the game and they start becoming a player on the scene. And I think that's really what has been like such a big impact for me. And that's why, yes, there are a lot of people that are given a lot of money and they also fail just as much. There are people who are born with nothing and they succeed. So it kind of works both ways, but what do we want to believe about it?
It's a choice.
Yeah.
It's a choice.
It's a choice.
Yeah. So you gave yourself permission to be rich at a very young age. What is different between now and then? Because I know you had a hustler mentality, but you didn't want to do street hustle. You wanted to do corporate hustle, right? And now I know that there has been a lot of mindset change about resistance and all of that. So what, for you as an individual, what is the difference between you then and you now that you have gone into mindset and you've changed your approach towards getting rich? What's the difference?
Oh, that's a great question. I think what's different now is that I've had many years to kind of refine the approach. So there was an element of like a bit more of like wild eagerness. Back then, I was much more, I subscribed much more to like a work hard and that my hard work and my achievements were attached to my value.
Mhm.
until I finally hit a point where I had racked up all of these achievements, which I felt were like nothing, no big deal, like nothing. But to the outer world, people were like, how is it that you're, 35 and you've done all of these things and you've lived in all these countries and you've worked in all these jobs? But I constantly felt like it was never good enough and it was never enough. So while I had this permission to be rich, it wasn't really like a true permission to be valued as a person, because it was like I was only as good as my next achievement. And what started happening in my life is that I was tired, I was exhausted, and I wasn't fulfilled. I was, but I really wasn't. Like the underlying energy was that something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I started to look around and realize like this isn't me.
Mhm.
It's like the famous Eckhart Tolle when he asked himself when he went through his massive awakening, I can't live with myself. He was about to commit suicide. And then he said,
Yeah.
oh, existential moment. If I can't live with myself, then who am I? And Shreka, you're the I am
Yes.
expert, right? So it's like, who
Yeah.
am I? This is not me. And I
Yeah.
started to gain these like flashes and I started to understand that more was happening. And through that, I went through an incredible process of realizing that the value is not in the achievements. It's in the
Not
essence
at
of who you
all.
are. The value is
Right.
within yourself. And it really was a massive paradigm shift for me. Not this like work hard, like hit it hard. That's what I used to say. I'm going to hit it. I'm going to hit it hard. And I would go for it for weeks. And I would be tired. I would get sick. It was like exhausted, maybe, not exercise, but work like intensively. But to be honest, it never really created like a deep, long lasting wealth for me.
So I'm glad you brought this up because it's really, really, really important, the self-worth and the self-love. To the average person, if you tell them you need to feel worthy and then you go out there, if we can create that in our society, it would provide us with so much, the difference would be massive, because if you're worthy before you go out there, then you are acting in integrity because you know nothing at all adds or take away from your worth, right? So I had a client the other day. She has 2 degrees, right? She has 2 science degrees, and she's a woman in science, and she has 2 degrees, and she didn't feel worthy.
It's so
She didn't feel
common.
worthy.
It's
Yeah, she
so
didn't feel
common.
worthy. And we had to go through a whole process about that and thing. And she didn't. And I was saying to her, when she said it to me, I was like, okay, I'm glad you said that, because now I picked up on the self-worth factor, because people and I think it has to do with how we're grown or we're brought up, right? They tell you if you don't do this, you're not going to come. You're not going to do anything with your life. You're not going to be worth anything. You're not going to be valued anything. But essentially, we are already worthy. We're born that way. And unfortunately we have to go back to religion, because there's a religious factor here that tells us that we're not worthy, right? But we are, because the same religion teaches that God is complete and unconditionally loving. And then if you're a child of that God, why aren't you worthy?
Yeah. And you know what? You just remind me, of this concept of radical unconditional self-love and radical self-acceptance. And
Yeah.
the difference between then and now is that then I was in a race. It was like a race for time. It was like a race, a
I
competition.
have to do this and I
It
have to
was
do
so
that.
intense and it was so fast and it was like go, 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 go. And it was always about like the next place, the next this, the next travel, the next, like, there was never enough. And I finally surrendered and I realized it's never going to be enough. I will never be full. I will never have enough, because it's not about my achievements. And this is the human condition when we go through this massive quantum shift in our life in the 30s and the 40s, the late 20s, usually around this midlife period. where suddenly it's like the rat race, or even though I thought I avoided the rat race and made my own money, I made a lot of money at a young age, it just wasn't enough. And I suddenly had to practice. I still practice, right? The journey is never through. Slowing down in order to speed up. Knowing that good days and bad days, they're all days that are a part of the journey, and it's completely acceptable. Releasing judgment, releasing fear, driving yourself forward in a way where the value is the value that you place on yourself. And that's that unconditional, radical commitment to self-love and self-acceptance, which is, you have to make mistakes when you're building a fortune. You have to make mistakes. But if you're constantly feeling like you're not good enough underneath and you're not worth it, it starts to reflect in what you're creating. And that's why we see so many stories of people who have built their fortune and lose it. I mean, that's so common.
Yeah.
Because it's like this attitude of always having enough or not being worthy of what they've earned. It's like the imposter syndrome, just like your client. Your client is probably like most of your clients, but it's also like the majority of people in the world.
Yeah.
No matter how much you have, what's going on here is all human.
Still feeling lack, still feeling not enough, still feel like I need to do more in order to be accepted. And if we can correct that, I think it's so fundamental. It is so fundamental. If you can just lie down there and say, okay, this is me, and I don't have this, and I don't have that, and it's okay. I'm still me. I'm still worth it. I still have value. If you can get to that place, then you'd have won the battle.
I just want to share one more thing. On the topic of permission to be rich, let's see if I have the books here. I always have books stacked around everywhere. My famous book that I always recommend, the Diana Cooper book, A Little Light on the Spiritual Laws. And in this book, she talks about laws of the universe, and she talks about the law of abundance. She talks about the law of prosperity, and she talks about the law of attraction. And one of the things that is directly linked to giving yourself energetic permission to be rich, and this is like for all of us, and I know, Sharika, you practice this in what you do and with your clients, but for everyone who's listening now, everyone who's going to listen later, the heart space is directly related to our abundance energy, to the law of abundance.
Yeah.
So the more that we can relax and open up into our heart space and start to let down the hardened walls that have been built around our heart over the first part of our life, the more we are able to open up and receive love. But receiving love is not just about other people. Receiving love is about receiving love from yourself, receiving acceptance from yourself. As much as it is giving, we have to be able to fill that up first. Now, I know that sounds like very woo-woo and very kind of like, oh, open your heart and you'll develop wealth. But here's the deal. We're not talking about working hard and burning yourself out for the rest of your life to develop wealth, which we can do. We can still do that and have an open heart. But it's a lot easier when you have an open heart and you're open to receive. Because the thing here is that our heart becomes so hardened to protect us from hurt, from pain, from struggle, from breaking confidence. And as we, as energetic beings, work through opening up our heart space, softening the walls of our heart, practicing vulnerability, practicing self-acceptance, more compassion for ourselves, gentleness with who we are, we start to balance out that like wealth-driven masculine energy with the soft, loving, compassionate feminine energy. And the thing that's so funny about the heart space is that it's directly linked with our ability to receive more abundance and more wealth and more riches in our life. When we open up to receive, we don't just receive cash. We receive abundance in all areas of life, and we start to shift into the paradigm of I have enough. love. I have enough money. I have enough friends. I have enough resources. I have enough support. I have enough success. It's always enough, and I'm choosing more.
Right.
So, you know, one of the biggest shifts that I went through was when I realized that my heart was as hard as a rock. And I felt like I had no sensitivity, no care. I was like a human machine. And I said, this is no way to live. On paper, it's like huge success. But to me, it was like as if nothing.
Yeah.
And the opening of the heart takes time. It takes time to soften. It takes time to feel and practice it. So I thought I would just share that as like a final anecdote. With permission to be rich, it's like permission to love, permission to be compassionate, permission to rest, to be soft, permission to have fun and enjoy.
Yeah, it's permission to be human.
Yeah.
Really. Permission to be human.
That's right.
But I have a few questions to ask you. If you had to start all over again, what is one thing that you would not do?
Whoa. Not do. Ha! There are a lot of things I would do. Let's see. Considering I live with no regret for my entire life, I can't say I've thought about regrets ever. I also don't live with any worries, so I can't say that I would not do that because I don't do it already. One of the things that I probably would not do, I'm not sure. I don't ever think in negations. I probably would have been, like, there are things that I would do, but some of the things that I would do is I probably would have slowed down a little bit more when I was younger. And I probably would have found myself a more solid mentor or coach when I was much younger who would really be able to educate me about wealth and would be able to educate me about the way that finances work. I probably would have done that at a much younger age. I probably would have worked out like a wealth portfolio plan so that I could have started saving and developing my wealth at a much younger age. I would have educated myself on finances and how the financial world works. I probably would have been a little bit less reckless with my cash and my money. It wasn't bad. I had wonderful experiences, but maybe I would have like planned ahead about 10 or 20 years earlier. But I can't say I regret it. You know, I don't know if I would even change it, but I feel like that's really wise advice, is like really finding someone who like can solidly be there for you to rely on, to give you advice, to give you support, to give you guidance, and to really pick you up and push you when you're feeling down and lost and misguided. I felt like I probably did everything on my own for a very long time, and that was not a success strategy.
Right.
So those are the things that I would have done differently. Not do, I don't know. It's all been pretty good. I've learned a lot from it.
I get it.
I would have not, maybe, I don't know.
What are some of your daily affirmations?
Whoa. Well, my first affirmation is almost like gratitude practice. So I reaffirm how grateful I am for everything in my life, for my success, for my health, for my wealth, for my abundance, for my beautiful home, for the comfortable bed that I sleep in, for all of the people I love in my life. So I've kind of turned my affirmation into like a gratitude affirmation for everything I want, as if I'm living in that picture right now. And then my affirmations start with, I love being a successful multimillionaire. I love living the life of my dreams. And then I really reaffirm like the most basic foundational affirmations, which I think probably I'll never stop. I love being safe. I love being secure. I love being grounded. I love being loved and appreciated. I love being funny. I love being surrounded by funny people because humor is really important in my life.
Okay.
And then it kind of like, it goes on from there. But one of the more important ones around money is money is always flowing into my account every single day in all different ways, in increasing amounts, even while I sleep.
Even while I sleep.
Yeah, so though that's a money affirmation that I have affirmations around clientele, around business development. I am, and I love being a strong, powerful CEO, a strong, powerful woman of a global company that operates all over the world. And I want to just share two others that are a little bit different. I have one affirmation, which is around, I always have enough. I always have enough love. I always have enough money. I always have enough wealth. I always have enough time for everything. I always have enough support. I always have enough resources. I always have enough passion and sexuality in my life. That's important to me. And I also reaffirm after all of that, that the universe knows exactly what I want. The universe knows exactly who I want, and the universe knows exactly when I need it. And I mean, this is like basically a window into who I am on the inside. But that is basically what's going through my head all day, all the time. And there's a lot more. Everything is always working out for me. I always get parking. I'm always first. People offer me things all the time. And that is kind of, that becomes the reality of the life you live, right?
Yeah, it does. It definitely does.
I always get a table in the restaurant. People love having me in their space. Like, this is stuff we tell ourselves.
And we choose. That's the amazing thing. We get to choose our experiences. We get to choose our experiences. And we start with thoughts. So what's one word that adequately describes you? If you were to say something about Lyndsay in one word, what would that be?
The first word that comes to my mind, there were two. One was abundance, probably because we just talked about it. And then the word that really shows up for me is love.
Love. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. If you met someone in the street tomorrow morning and they wanted to make a change in their lives, what is 3 steps that you'd advise them to take?
Okay. The first step that I would advise the person to do is to immediately start practicing gratitude. And if I had it my way and they actually listened and did what I told them to do, I would recommend them practicing gratitude at an intensive level. So I always say, 21 gratitudes in the morning, 21 gratitudes at night for all different things, and really flex and exercise your gratitude muscle, because you will see your world shift and change in 30 days. So that's the first thing, is to get your energy under control. Practice gratitude as a way of life. That shifts your paradigm instantaneously, and it creates an upward spiral of energy, a high frequency vibration. The second thing I would do is I would tell them, create a plan. You need to know what you want in your life, and you need to have a plan in order to do it. And I encourage them to work on that every day. And the third thing would be to take action above and beyond your comfort zone every single day. Do something different, do something out of the ordinary, and really push your boundaries, push your limits, push your comfort zone every day. Get uncomfortable.
Okay.
So those are like, it's 3, but there's a little bit of 2 in the middle one.
Okay, so 1 is practice gratitude. Number 2 is know what you want, correct?
Well, yeah, it could either be a goal or a plan. They kind of go together, but definitely have a direction. know what you want, figure out what you're aiming for. And the third one is to take action outside of your comfort zone.
Okay. Okay. Nice. May I add a fourth one though?
A fourth one?
Yeah, I'm gonna add a fourth one.
Okay, go ahead.
Say, work on you. I'm adding work on you because you are the key piece. So I'm just gonna add that one.
Yeah, invest in yourself, study, read, develop, expand, like 100%.
Yeah,
you are the most valuable thing in your life.
Yeah.
Your only job is to build your life and be happy. There's really no other job.
That is true. That is definitely true. And yeah, that's true. What is one fundamental belief that you had to change in order to become who you are today?
Oh, wow. One fundamental belief. You know what? I think it was really, I'm going to just share one, which was that I was valued wholly and completely in my life. I valued myself, and those around me valued me as well. It wasn't just my outputs that were valued. It was more the inside, the person. And the other belief is that I can work half the time for 10 times the results. So working hard for results was a very intensive and dramatic belief that I had to shift for myself. And it was so worth it. It was so worth it.
That is the exact one that I'm working on now. I noticed that I work on the things in stages. So the other day I was working on self-love. Now I'm working on this extensive amount of work that you have to do, or that they say you have to do as an entrepreneur. I'm working on getting my mind convincing my mind that I don't have to do that, because I really don't believe that I should have to be exhausted all the time.
No.
I think I don't believe I should do that. So that's where I'm at now.
Oh, we can have a conversation about that. Let's have one. We'll set something up for next week, because this is like the best topic. This is when we start to get real in there. But here's the thing, Sharika, it's like, I was just saying today in a session, because today I had all my sessions, there's a fine line between the student and the teacher. You know, it's like never that the teacher is never more than their students, because the teacher learning through their students and the students learning through their teacher, because it works both ways. The student and the teacher have the same role, just different ways that it works together. So it's like, I realize, and I was talking about this earlier, but it's a never-ending process of growth. Like, if you think you've arrived, the biggest joke is always on you, because you realize that there's no arrival.
No, there isn't. There isn't.
The expansion and the potential is infinite.
Yeah, yeah. And if the moment you think you're there, that's when you become stuck.
Yeah, and also there's like a famous quote, I think it's by Descartes, but he says, a man who thinks he knows something actually knows nothing at all. And a man who knows he knows nothing knows that he knows something.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Before we met, I had studied so many things. So as you know, when we met, I had a vast knowledge of stuff in the spiritual world and the mindset and the ions and stuff, right? So I had, that actually caught me, right? I actually got to a point where I felt like I know it all. And then I was like, and then there's the factor of the difference between knowing the thing and being the thing.
Oh.
It's so major.
And it's like a process. It just has to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, once you hit that being, you're in for the rest of your life. It's like 1 year or 6 months of that kind of development. Boom, you can now appreciate your co-creation and manifesting now for years and years and years to come.
And you can relax.
Yeah.
You can relax.
I laugh because I really know what you're like. I love it. Uh-huh.
Yeah, you can relax because now you're like, okay, this is not even up to me, right?
Nope.
So I can. It's not even up to me because even this show, I didn't sit down and ask for this show or plan this show or anything. I was in a clubhouse room and it's like somebody just opened my head and dropped the idea in there. And the next day I started the show and the conversations have been amazing. And I've done some podcast interviews, and every time I did one, someone would say, "I see a podcast in your future," almost every time. And then I was on here, and someone else said it, and then it clicked, turn this into a podcast. So in January, this is gonna be a podcast.
Yeah. And
So
you know what? You're such a great host, and like you have such a gift. And we've worked together for a year now. You're so naturally gifted in the work you do. You just intuitively know the way and you figure it out, and you're just wired for the work you do. And not only
Thank
that,
you.
you're a great host. You look great. You show up well on camera. I'm excited about your show.
Thank you.
I
Thank
watched
you.
some
Thank
of your
you.
other shows and I really enjoy the content and the discussions, and it's just like it feels very, very natural. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me here today.
It was a real pleasure to have
Yeah.
you, Lyndsay. Really pleasure. Really wonderful. So
Thank you.
we're at the end of our conversation, and we'll definitely have that conversation about doing less work and mindset more. So we'll talk about that soon. But thank you so much for coming. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
taking the time. I didn't even know you just came back from your honeymoon, so I know you made extra effort to be here.
So I apologize. Hopefully next time I can put some makeup on, fix myself up a bit. But I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, me too, me too. And congratulations once more on the wedding.
Oh,
I wish
thank
I could have
you.
been there.
Next year we'll have a big party.
And I'll definitely be there. So
Oh yeah, you'll be in London.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will be. All right. So thanks again. And
Thank you,
everyone
Sharika. Thank you to everyone who joined. And I really look forward to seeing all of your episodes and all of your progress coming up in the future. Thank you so much.
And I'm looking forward to some amazing guests too. I have some really nice people lined up. So
Exciting.
So if you are not following me, those who are watching, do so. And look out for the amazing conversations. Invite a friend. And thank you once more for joining us. I appreciate you. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate you being here. And until next week, I am Sharika Sebi, the Mind Reset Strategist. See you in our next conversation. Goodbye.